An evening to celebrate. Tasha Adams had spent years working her way up the corporate ladder. At just 34, she was a rising star in Manhattan's legal scene, recently promoted to senior partner at one of the city's most prestigious law firms. The accomplishment was monumental, a testament to her determination, brilliance, and unshakable poise. To celebrate this milestone, Tasha decided to treat herself to an evening at Étoile, a renowned French restaurant nestled in the heart of Manhattan. Known for its exclusivity and unparalleled elegance, Étoile was frequented by New York's elite. As Tasha entered the restaurant, her presence turned heads. Dressed in a sleek black evening gown with delicate silver jewelry that accentuated her glowing skin, she exuded confidence and grace. Yet, the atmosphere seemed to shift subtly. The host, a middle-aged man in a crisp suit, greeted her with a strained smile. He hesitated momentarily before leading her to a table, not one of the coveted spots by the large windows overlooking the city skyline, but a smaller, tucked-away corner near the back. Tasha's keen instincts caught the slight, but she chose not to make a scene. Dignity, she believed, was best maintained through composure, not confrontation. Once seated, Tasha took in her surroundings. The restaurant was every bit as opulent as she had imagined. Chandeliers cast a warm golden glow, live piano music drifted through the air, and the murmur of polished conversations filled the space. However, she couldn't ignore the occasional glances from nearby patrons, a mix of curiosity, judgment, and, in some cases, disdain. It wasn't unfamiliar. Being a successful black woman in predominantly white spaces often came with such unspoken scrutiny. But tonight was her night, and she refused to let anyone diminish her celebration. Tasha signaled the waiter assigned to her table. He approached with a hurried gait, his expression a mix of impatience and indifference. "Good evening," he said curtly, not bothering to meet her gaze. "Have you decided?" "Yes," Tasha replied, her voice calm and steady. "I'll start with the lobster bisque and follow with the filet mignon, medium rare, please." The waiter, whose name tag read Ryan, scribbled her order without acknowledgement. "Anything else?" he asked flatly. "Just a glass of your house red," Tasha replied. Ryan nodded briskly and walked away without another word. Tasha let out a quiet sigh. It wasn't the first time she had encountered such dismissive service, but she wasn't about to let it ruin her evening. As she waited for her meal, Tasha observed the room. A couple nearby laughed over shared appetizers, a group of executives clinked glasses in a toast, and a young woman in a flowing gown twirled her wine glass thoughtfully. The ambience was enchanting, but the undercurrent of judgment aimed her way remained palpable. When Ryan returned with her wine, he placed it on the table with a clumsy thud, some of the liquid sloshing onto the pristine white tablecloth. Tasha's eyes flicked to the red stain, but she said nothing. She thanked him politely, her tone measured. The lobster bisque arrived, and Tasha immersed herself in the flavors. It was exquisite, every spoonful a reminder of why Étoile held its prestigious reputation. She was halfway through her soup when she noticed Ryan approaching again, this time carrying a tray with a glass of water. Tasha hadn't requested water, but she assumed it was a courtesy. As he neared her table, Ryan's expression shifted. His lips curled into a subtle smirk, his eyes betraying a glint of malice. In a move that seemed almost deliberate, he tilted the glass as he placed it down, spilling its contents across her arm and onto her elegant dress. Tasha gasped as the cold liquid soaked through the fabric, the chill spreading across her skin. For a moment, she sat frozen, processing what had just happened. "Oops," Ryan said, his tone devoid of genuine apology. He straightened, crossing his arms over his chest. "Maybe this will lighten your tone," he added, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The room went silent. Conversations halted mid-sentence, forks hovered mid-air, and all eyes turned toward Tasha's table. The live piano music faltered, the melody breaking as the pianist hesitated, sensing the tension. Tasha slowly looked up at Ryan, her face a mask of calm. Inside, however, A storm raged. She felt the weight of every gaze in the room, the heat of humiliation crawling up her spine. But she refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her flustered. Taking a linen napkin, Tasha dabbed at her arm and dress with deliberate care. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but firm, each word enunciated with precision. "Did you just say what I think you said?" Ryan's smirk faltered slightly, but he held his ground. "It was just a joke," he said, shrugging. Tasha set the napkin down and rose from her chair. Her poise was unshaken, her posture commanding. "A joke?" she repeated, her tone sharp. "You find it amusing to humiliate someone based on the color of their skin?" Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but Tasha continued, her voice carrying across the room. "Do you think your actions say anything about me?" "No. They reveal who you are, small, insecure, and incapable of recognizing dignity even when it's right in front of you." The restaurant was completely still. Even those who had initially looked away were now captivated by the unfolding scene. Tasha's words resonated, cutting through the silence like a blade. Ryan's face turned a shade of red, his smirk now replaced by an expression of unease. He glanced around, perhaps hoping for support, but found none. The other staff members stared at him with thinly veiled disapproval, and the patrons' expressions ranged from shock to disgust. At that moment, the restaurant manager, a polished woman named Clara, hurried over. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she approached, her face a mix of embarrassment and urgency. "Miss Adams, I am so sorry," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "This is absolutely unacceptable. Ryan, you're dismissed. Gather your belongings and leave immediately." Ryan's jaw tightened. He hesitated, clearly reluctant to comply, but Clara's glare left no room for argument. With a huff, he turned and stormed off toward the kitchen. Clara turned back to Tasha, her hands clasped in front of her. "Miss Adams, please accept my sincerest apologies. Your meal will be fully comped, and we will take immediate steps to ensure such behavior is never repeated." Tasha regarded Clara with an unwavering gaze. "Comping my meal doesn't address the root of the problem," she said. "I'm not interested in free food. I'm interested in respect. Ensure your staff understands that dignity is non-negotiable." Clara nodded, her expression solemn. "Of course, ma'am. We will conduct a full review and mandatory training for all employees. I assure you, this incident will not be taken lightly." Tasha's composure remained intact, but her words carried weight. "I'll hold you to that," she said before taking her seat once more. The room, still silent, seemed to collectively exhale as the tension began to dissipate. What no one realized was that a nearby diner had discreetly recorded the entire exchange. By morning, the video would be everywhere, sparking a conversation far bigger than the confines of one restaurant. The ripple effect. The following morning, Tasha Adams woke to the persistent buzz of her phone. Notifications streamed in faster than she could swipe them away. Confused, she rubbed her eyes and reached for her phone, only to see her face splashed across every social media platform. Her exchange with the waiter at Etoile had gone viral overnight. The video, posted by an anonymous diner, had already amassed millions of views. The title read, "Lawyer Stands Up to Racist Waiter, a Masterclass in Dignity." Tasha watched the video, her heart pounding. Every word she'd spoken was captured, as was the palpable silence in the restaurant. The comments ranged from outrage at the waiter's behavior to admiration for her composure. Hashtags like #DignityInAction and #TashaAdams were trending. For a moment, Tasha considered turning off her phone and pretending the whole thing hadn't happened. She'd never sought the limelight and preferred her accomplishments to speak for themselves. But as the messages of support poured in, she realized this was bigger than her. Her response had struck a chord, igniting conversations about racism, microaggressions, and the power of standing up for oneself. As she sipped her morning coffee, Tasha received a call from her law firm's managing partner, Elaine Chen. "Tasha, have you seen the video?" Elaine asked, her voice equal parts concerned and impressed. "I have," Tasha replied, bracing herself for what might come next. "Good," Elaine said firmly. "You handled yourself brilliantly. The firm fully supports you, and if you're comfortable with it, we'd like to release a statement aligning ourselves with your message." Tasha was momentarily stunned. She'd half expected a warning to keep a low profile, but Elaine's unwavering support bolstered her resolve. "Thank you, Elaine. That means a lot. Let's do it." Within hours, the law firm released a statement condemning discrimination and praising Tasha for her courage. It only amplified the attention, and soon media outlets were reaching out for interviews. While Tasha was hesitant to step into the public eye, she recognized an opportunity to drive meaningful change. Meanwhile, back at Etoile, the fallout from the incident was immediate. The restaurant's owner, Jean-Luc Moreau, was livid when he learned of what had transpired. As a businessman who prided himself on Etoile's reputation for excellence, the viral video threatened to undo years of careful branding. He summoned an emergency meeting with his staff. Clara Martin, the restaurant manager, stood at the head of the room, visibly tense. The entire team had been called in early, and the atmosphere was heavy with unease. Jean-Luc's stern gaze swept across the room before he spoke. "What happened last night was unacceptable," he began, his French accent sharp and clipped. "Not only did it violate the core values of this establishment, but it also exposed a serious flaw in our culture. This is not who we are, and it will not be tolerated." Clara stepped forward, holding a clipboard. "Effective immediately, we will be implementing mandatory diversity and sensitivity training for all staff. Furthermore, Ryan Blake has been terminated. Let this be a reminder that there are consequences for actions that undermine our commitment to respect and inclusivity." The staff exchanged uneasy glances. Some murmured in agreement, while others remained stoic. Among them was Sofia Alvarez, a young server who had been working at Etoile for 2 years. She'd witnessed the incident the night before and had been grappling with guilt for not stepping in sooner. Now, as Clara outlined the new protocols, Sofia raised her hand. "Excuse me," Sofia said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "What about the rest of us? It's not just about firing Ryan. We all need to do better. Last night, I saw what happened and didn't say anything. That's on me, too." Jean-Luc's expression softened, and he nodded. "You're right, Sofia. Silence can be complicity. That's why this training is not optional. We must hold ourselves accountable and create an environment where everyone feels valued." As the restaurant staff reckoned with their role in the incident, Tasha's day took an unexpected turn. She received a call from a woman named Angela Brooks, a community organizer who worked with youth programs in Harlem. Angela had seen the video and wanted to collaborate on an initiative to address systemic racism in the service industry. "Your composure was inspiring," Angela said. "But we both know that for every incident like this that gets attention, there are countless others that go unnoticed. I'd love to work with you to turn this moment into a movement." Tasha was intrigued. Angela's passion was infectious, and the idea of channeling her experience into something constructive appealed to her. "Let's meet," Tasha said. "I'm in." That evening, the two women met at a coffee shop in Harlem. Angela outlined her vision for a program that would provide training and resources to service workers, empowering them to confront bias and create inclusive environments. Tasha listened intently, offering her insights and legal expertise. By the end of the meeting, they had a plan. The initiative, tentatively named Serve with Respect, would launch with workshops and community discussions, aiming to transform how businesses approached diversity and inclusion. As Tasha's involvement in the initiative deepened, she couldn't help but reflect on the events that had led her here. What had begun as a personal celebration had become a catalyst for change. The incident at Etoile was no longer just a story about a rude waiter, it was a rallying cry for dignity, respect, and accountability. Meanwhile, the viral video continued to gain traction. Celebrities and public figures shared it, adding their voices to the conversation. Donations poured in to support Serve with Respect, and local businesses began reaching out, eager to participate in the training program. Despite the overwhelming attention, Tasha remained grounded. She knew that real change wouldn't come from a single viral moment but from sustained effort and collaboration. As she prepared for the first workshop, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. What had initially been a humiliating experience had become an opportunity to create something meaningful. Back at Etoile, the changes were already taking root. The restaurant's first diversity training session was held that week, led by a facilitator with expertise in addressing workplace bias. Sophia, the young server who had spoken up during the staff meeting, found herself deeply moved by the session. She approached Clara afterward. "I want to do more," Sophia said. "Can we partner with Tasha's initiative? Maybe Etoile can sponsor a workshop or host an event." Clara smiled, impressed by Sophia's initiative. "That's a fantastic idea. Let's make it happen." Building bridges. The first workshop for Serve with Respect was nothing short of a resounding success. Tasha Adams watched from the side of the community center's main hall as participants engaged in passionate discussions, shared personal stories, and brainstormed solutions. She could hardly believe how quickly the initiative had grown, thanks to Angela Brooks' organizational skills and the viral nature of the restaurant incident. Tasha's focus was no longer on the humiliation she had endured but on the larger purpose it had catalyzed. After the event, Tasha lingered to speak with attendees. Many approached her with words of gratitude and admiration, while others offered their own experiences with discrimination and injustice. Among them was an older gentleman with a kind face and weathered hands who introduced himself as Henry Simmons, a retired schoolteacher. "Miss Adams, I just wanted to say how proud I am of you," Henry began, his voice tinged with emotion. "What you're doing here matters. I've seen too many young people lose faith in themselves because of how they're treated. This gives hope." Tasha smiled, deeply touched. "Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Hearing that means the world to me. I hope we can continue to make a difference." As the evening wound down, Angela approached Tasha with a clipboard and a gleam of excitement in her eyes. "Guess what? We've already had 5 local businesses sign up for the next workshop," she announced. Tasha's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "That's amazing. Which businesses?" Angela flipped through her notes. "A couple of cafes, a bookstore, and, wait for it, Etoile." Tasha's expression shifted to one of cautious curiosity. "Etoile? Really?" "Yup. The manager, Clara Martin, reached out. She said they want to sponsor a session and send their entire staff through the program," Angela replied, her tone carefully neutral. Tasha paused, her thoughts racing. While she appreciated the gesture, she couldn't ignore the complicated feelings she harbored about the restaurant. Still, if their participation meant progress, she wasn't going to let personal grievances get in the way. "If they're serious about making changes, I'm all for it," Tasha said finally. "But let's make sure it's not just a PR move." Angela nodded. "Already on it. I'll set up a meeting with Clara so we can discuss their involvement in detail." The meeting with Clara Martin took place 2 days later in a quiet corner of a midtown coffee shop. Clara arrived looking more subdued than Tasha had expected, her usually polished demeanor softened by an air of humility. She extended a hand as she sat down. "Miss Adams, thank you for meeting me," Clara began. "I want to start by apologizing again for what happened at Etoile. It was unacceptable, and I take full responsibility as the manager." Tasha nodded, her expression unreadable. "I appreciate that, Clara. But apologies alone aren't enough. What exactly does Etoile hope to achieve by joining Serve with Respect?" Clara took a deep breath. "I'll be honest. The viral video put us in a tough spot. But this isn't just about damage control. What happened that night forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our culture. We want to do better, not just for appearances, but because it's the right thing to do. That's why we're not only enrolling our staff in the workshops but also committing to long-term partnerships with organizations like yours. Tasha studied Clara's face, searching for any sign of insincerity. To her surprise, she found none. If that's truly your intention, then I'm willing to work with you. But be prepared for accountability. This isn't about checking boxes, it's about meaningful change. Clara's expression hardened with resolve. Understood. You have my word. As word of Etoile's involvement spread, the buzz surrounding Serve with Respect only grew. Tasha and Angela began receiving invitations to speak at conferences, host panels, and collaborate with other advocacy groups. Each step forward brought new challenges, but it also reinforced their belief in the power of collective action. Meanwhile, back at Etoile, the staff was undergoing its first round of diversity training. The sessions were led by a facilitator named Dr. Nia Harper, an expert in workplace inclusivity. Sophia Alvarez, the young server who had taken initiative after the incident, found the sessions eye-opening. I never realized how much bias can be baked into everyday interactions, Sophia admitted during a group discussion. It's not just about big, obvious things like what Ryan did. It's the smaller things, too, like who we choose to smile at or how we address people. Dr. Harper nodded. Exactly. Change starts with awareness. Once we recognize our biases, we can begin to challenge and unlearn them. The session sparked honest conversations among the staff, many of whom shared their own experiences with discrimination. For Clara, it was a humbling process. As she listened to her team, she realized how much she had overlooked in her role as a manager. As the weeks passed, Tasha found herself increasingly inspired by the ripple effects of the movement she had unwittingly started. One evening, after a particularly long day, she received an unexpected call from Henry Simmons, the retired teacher she had met at the first workshop. Tasha, I've been thinking, Henry said. Would you consider bringing Serve with Respect to schools? Kids need to learn about these things early, before biases take root. The idea struck a chord with Tasha. She'd been so focused on the service industry that she hadn't considered the potential impact on younger generations. That's a brilliant idea, Mr. Simmons. Let's make it happen. With Henry's help, Tasha and Angela began developing a curriculum tailored for schools. The program, called Respect Begins Here, combined interactive activities, storytelling, and role-playing exercises to teach empathy and inclusion. The pilot program launched at a middle school in Harlem, where it was met with overwhelming enthusiasm from students and teachers alike. One student, a shy 7th grader named Malik, stood up during a session and shared his own story. Sometimes people make fun of my name or my hair, he said, his voice trembling. It makes me feel like I don't belong. But hearing everyone talk today makes me think maybe I do. Tasha felt tears prick her eyes as she listened. Moments like these reminded her why the work mattered. Back at Etoile, Clara and Sophia were preparing for the restaurant's first event in partnership with Serve with Respect. The evening would feature a panel discussion on diversity in the hospitality industry, followed by a fundraising dinner to support the initiative. Tasha was the keynote speaker, and as she took the stage that night, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Change is never easy, she began, her voice steady and clear. It requires us to confront uncomfortable truths, to listen, and to act. But when we commit to doing better, together, we create something powerful. Tonight is proof of that. The room erupted in applause, and Tasha felt a renewed sense of purpose. What had begun as a single moment of indignity had grown into a movement that was breaking barriers and building bridges. And this, she knew, was just the beginning. Turning moments into movements. Tasha Adams had always believed in the law's ability to bring justice, but what she was now witnessing transcended courtrooms and legal briefs. The transformation sparked by her encounter at Etoile was growing into something much larger, fueled by genuine passion and the collective desire for change. What had begun as a humiliating incident had become the foundation of a movement touching lives far beyond her own. The night of the panel discussion at Etoile had been a resounding success. Clara Martin, the restaurant's manager, had worked tirelessly to ensure the event ran smoothly. She greeted attendees personally, including community leaders, restaurant owners, and members of the press. For Clara, this was more than an event, it was an opportunity to demonstrate her sincerity and to rebuild the reputation of the establishment she managed. Tasha's keynote address had moved the audience to tears, particularly when she recounted the moment she decided to confront Ryan Blake, the waiter who had poured water on her. "What he thought would humiliate me only solidified my resolve," she had said, her voice steady. "That moment wasn't about me alone. It was about the countless others who face indignities every day and choose to rise above them." The speech was met with a standing ovation, and donations poured in to support the "Serve with Respect" initiative. Tasha left the event with renewed energy and an even clearer sense of purpose. The following week, Tasha found herself busier than ever. She juggled her responsibilities at the law firm with her growing role in the initiative. Angela Brooks, ever the logistical mastermind, had secured partnerships with several organizations, including a national chain of coffee shops that pledged to implement mandatory inclusivity training for their staff. "We're scaling faster than I imagined," Angela said during one of their late-night planning sessions. "It's incredible, but we need more hands on deck. Have you thought about bringing more people onto the team?" Tasha nodded. "I have, and I think I know just the person to start with." The next day, Tasha reached out to Sofia Alvarez, the server from Etoile who had been instrumental in encouraging her colleagues to embrace the diversity training. Sofia was surprised but honored, and Tasha asked her to join the initiative as a program coordinator. "Me?" Sofia exclaimed, her voice filled with disbelief. "I'm just a server. What do I know about running a movement?" Tasha smiled warmly. "You're not just anything, Sofia. You saw a problem and took action when others stayed silent. That's leadership. Besides, you have first-hand experience in the service industry. You understand the challenges better than most. We need your perspective." Sofia's hesitation melted into determination. "Okay. I'm in. Let's do this." With Sofia on board, the initiative's operations became even more efficient. Sofia's insight into the daily realities of service workers helped shape the training modules, making them more relatable and impactful. One of her ideas was to include role-playing scenarios that mirrored real-life incidents, allowing participants to practice responding to discrimination or bias in constructive ways. "It's one thing to talk about these issues," Sofia explained during a planning session. "But until people experience it, even in a simulated environment, they won't fully understand the impact." The first session using Sofia's approach was held at a bustling diner in Brooklyn. The staff, initially skeptical, quickly became engaged as they navigated scenarios that challenged their assumptions and encouraged empathy. By the end of the workshop, many participants expressed a newfound understanding of how their actions, intentional or not, could affect others. As the initiative gained momentum, Tasha began receiving invitations to speak at events across the country. One such invitation came from a prestigious business conference in Chicago, where she was asked to deliver a keynote on creating inclusive workplace cultures. The conference was held in a sleek, modern venue overlooking Lake Michigan. Tasha felt a mix of excitement and nerves as she stepped onto the stage. The room was filled with executives, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders, all eager to hear what she had to say. "Inclusion isn't just a moral imperative, it's a business one," Tasha began, her voice steady and confident. "When people feel valued and respected, they bring their best selves to work. That's how you build not just a team, but a community." Her speech was met with thunderous applause, and several attendees approached her afterward to discuss implementing similar initiatives in their own organizations. Tasha's message was resonating, and the impact was spreading far beyond what she had ever imagined. Back in New York, Etoile continued to evolve under Clara's leadership. The restaurant became a model for inclusivity in the hospitality industry, hosting monthly workshops and community events. Clara even started a scholarship program for aspiring chefs from underrepresented backgrounds, funded in part by proceeds from their fundraising dinners. One evening, Tasha decided to visit Etoile for dinner, this time as a guest of honor. Clara greeted her warmly, and Sophia joined them at the table, eager to share updates on the initiative. "We've come a long way," Clara said, raising her glass in a toast. "And we couldn't have done it without you, Tasha." Tasha smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "Here's to all of us, and to what we can accomplish together." As they clinked glasses, Tasha reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. What had started as a painful experience had blossomed into a movement that was changing lives and building bridges. And while there was still much work to be done, she knew they were on the right path. Expanding horizons. Tasha Adams sat at her desk, staring at the rapidly growing spreadsheet on her laptop. It was filled with data, names of participating businesses, workshop schedules, feedback reports, and donation summaries. What had started as a small initiative had snowballed into a nationwide movement, and Tasha was both exhilarated and overwhelmed. She had always been organized and methodical, but the sheer scale of "serve with respect" was something she had never anticipated. Angela Brooks walked into the office carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You look like you could use this," she said, setting one down on Tasha's desk. Tasha chuckled and took a grateful sip. "You're a lifesaver. How's the outreach for the next wave of workshops?" Angela pulled up a chair and opened her tablet. "We're solid in New York and Chicago. We've got interest from businesses in Atlanta, Los Angeles, and even a few international inquiries. But there's one thing I think we need to address sooner rather than later." Tasha raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Follow through," Angela replied. "The workshops are impactful, but we need a way to measure long-term change. Are businesses actually implementing what they learn, or is this just a feel-good moment for them?" Tasha nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. We need metrics, follow-up sessions, maybe even certification programs to ensure accountability." "Follow through," Angela replied. "The workshops are impactful, but we need a way to measure long-term change. Are businesses actually implementing what they learn, or is this just a feel-good moment for them?" Tasha nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. We need metrics, follow-up sessions, maybe even certification programs to ensure accountability." Angela grinned. "I knew you'd say that. I've already started drafting a proposal." Tasha laughed, shaking her head in admiration. "Remind me to never underestimate you." While Tasha and Angela worked on expanding the initiative's reach, Sofia Alvarez was busy coordinating the next big event, a multi-city virtual conference on inclusivity in the workplace. The conference would feature panels, breakout sessions, and keynote speeches from industry leaders and activists. It was Sofia's first major project since joining the team, and she was determined to make it a success. "Are you sure about this panel lineup?" Sofia asked during a team meeting. "I think we need more representation from small businesses. It's great to have the big names, but small business owners face unique challenges that often get overlooked." Angela nodded in agreement. "Good point. Let's reach out to some of the businesses we've worked with in Brooklyn and Harlem. They'll bring valuable perspectives." Sofia made a note and smiled. She was starting to find her rhythm, and the team's collaborative approach made her feel empowered. The day of the virtual conference arrived, and the response was overwhelming. Over 10,000 participants logged in from across the country and beyond. The panels covered topics ranging from addressing unconscious bias to creating inclusive hiring practices. One session, titled Courageous Conversations, featured Tasha as a speaker alongside a civil rights attorney and a corporate diversity officer. During the session, Tasha shared a story about her own journey. "The hardest part isn't confronting others," she said. "It's confronting yourself, your fears, your doubts, your vulnerabilities. But when you do, you find a strength you didn't know you had. That strength is what drives change." The chat window exploded with comments of support and gratitude. Many participants shared their own experiences, creating a sense of community that transcended the virtual format. Meanwhile, at Etoile, Clara Martin was reflecting on the restaurant's transformation. The monthly workshops had become a staple, and the staff's morale was higher than ever. Clara had also implemented a mentorship program for employees interested in advancing their careers, and Sophia's idea of role-playing scenarios had been integrated into their training protocols. One evening, Clara received an email from Ryan Blake, the former waiter whose actions had sparked the movement. The subject line read, "Seeking forgiveness." Clara hesitated before opening it, unsure of what to expect. The message was surprisingly sincere. "Dear Clara, I hope this email finds you well. I've had a lot of time to reflect on my actions, and I realize how much harm I caused, not just to Miss Adams, but to the entire restaurant and everyone who witnessed that night. I'm deeply sorry. I've started volunteering at a community center, working with young people to address issues of bias and discrimination. It's been humbling and eye-opening. I'm not asking for anything, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying to do better. Thank you for holding me accountable. It was the wake-up call I needed. Sincerely, Ryan Blake." Clara read the email twice, her emotions a mix of surprise and cautious hope. She decided to forward it to Tasha, adding a note, "Thought you'd want to see this." Tasha's initial reaction mirrored Clara's. She read Ryan's words carefully, weighing their sincerity. While she had no intention of absolving him completely, she appreciated the steps he was taking toward accountability. Maybe this is proof that people can change, Tasha thought. As the initiative continued to grow, Tasha found herself reflecting on the broader impact of their work. One evening, she visited a community center in Harlem where Respect Begins Here, the school-focused branch of the initiative, was hosting an event. She watched as students participated in activities designed to foster empathy and understanding. During a Q&A session, a young girl named Aaliyah raised her hand. "Miss Adams, what do you do when people don't listen?" she asked, her voice small but steady. Tasha smiled warmly. "Sometimes people won't listen right away, Aaliyah. But you keep speaking your truth, and you keep showing them who you are. Change takes time, but it always starts with someone brave enough to take the first step." The room erupted in applause, and Tasha felt a lump rise in her throat. Moments like these reminded her of why she'd started this journey. Back at the office, Angela was putting the finishing touches on the certification program they discussed. "We're calling it Certified in Respect," she said, showing Tasha the mock-up of the logo. The program would include follow-up evaluations, progress reports, and recognition for businesses that demonstrated sustained commitment to inclusivity. It was another step toward ensuring that the movement's impact would be lasting. Tasha leaned back in her chair, a rare moment of calm washing over her. The work was far from over, but they were making progress. What had started as a single act of defiance had grown into a network of voices united by a shared purpose. And for Tasha, that was worth every ounce of effort. A legacy of change. Months had passed since the incident at Etoile had first gone viral, and the impact of "Serve with Respect" had exceeded even Tasha Adams' wildest expectations. What had begun as a moment of humiliation and resolve had blossomed into a powerful movement for change, reaching corners of society Tasha had never imagined. But with success came challenges, and the realization that the work was never truly finished. Tasha sat in a quiet conference room in Washington, D.C., awaiting the start of a roundtable discussion with policymakers and industry leaders. Angela Brooks sat beside her, scrolling through her tablet to double-check their presentation slides. The meeting, hosted by the Department of Labor, aimed to address workplace discrimination on a national scale. Tasha's role was to share the successes and lessons of Serve with Respect, showcasing how grassroots initiatives could drive systemic change. The room began to fill with people, from corporate executives in tailored suits to community organizers with notebooks brimming with ideas. When it was Tasha's turn to speak, she took a deep breath and stepped to the podium. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady and clear. "When I stood up to a waiter's insult months ago, I never imagined it would lead to this moment. But what I've learned is that change starts in small moments. It starts when one person says, 'This is not okay.' And when others join in, those small moments become movements. Today, I want to talk about how we can turn those movements into lasting change." Her speech outlined the key elements of the initiative's success: community involvement, continuous education, and accountability. She highlighted the certification program Angela had developed, emphasizing its role in ensuring businesses didn't just pay lip service to inclusivity but actively embraced it. By the time she finished, the room was filled with applause, and several attendees approached her to discuss potential collaborations. Back in New York, Sofia Alvarez was leading a workshop at a family-owned bakery in Queens. The owner, Maria Rodriguez, had been inspired by Tasha's story and wanted her staff to undergo training to ensure all customers felt welcome. Sofia had become a natural facilitator, combining empathy and practicality to connect with participants. "Let's talk about microaggressions," Sofia said, addressing the small group of bakers and cashiers. "These are the little things that people might not even realize are hurtful, like assuming someone doesn't speak English because of their accent or making jokes about someone's appearance. Has anyone here experienced or witnessed something like that?" One of the cashiers, a young man named Luis, raised his hand hesitantly. "Sometimes customers say things about Maria's accent," he admitted. "Like, they'll mock her or pretend they can't understand her. It makes me so mad, but I never know what to say." Maria nodded, her expression somber. "I've dealt with it my whole life. I just brush it off, but it's exhausting." Sofia smiled encouragingly. "Thank you for sharing that. The first step is recognizing that it's not okay. And the next step is learning how to address it. Let's practice some responses together." The group spent the next hour role-playing scenarios and discussing strategies for handling difficult situations. By the end of the session, the atmosphere was lighter, and Maria expressed her gratitude to Sofia. "This has been so helpful," Maria said. "Not just for my business, but for me personally. Thank you." As Serve with Respect continued to grow, it began to attract high-profile attention. One day, Tasha received a call from a producer at a major news network. They wanted to feature her story in a documentary series about individuals making a difference. "This could be huge," Angela said when Tasha shared the news. "But are you ready for that kind of spotlight?" Tasha hesitated. While she was proud of the work they were doing, she had always been wary of becoming the face of the movement. "It's not about me," she said finally. "It's about the message. If this helps amplify it, then I'm willing to do it." The documentary team spent weeks following Tasha, Angela, Sofia, and others involved in the initiative. They filmed workshops, interviews, and community events, capturing the heart of the movement. When the series aired, it brought a surge of interest and support, with donations and volunteer applications pouring in from across the country. One of the most emotional moments for Tasha came when she received a handwritten letter from Ryan Blake, the former waiter whose actions had set everything in motion. It was the first time he had reached out to her directly. "Dear Miss Adams, I've thought about writing this letter 100 times, and I still don't know if I have the right words. What I did to you was inexcusable, and I'm deeply sorry. I've spent the past few months trying to understand my own biases and how they shaped my behavior. I've also been volunteering at a community center and attending workshops to educate myself. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your courage changed me. You turned a moment of hurt into something powerful, and I'm committed to being part of the change. Thank you for showing me the kind of person I want to be. With respect, Ryan Blake. Tasha read the letter several times, her emotions a mix of relief and resolve. While she wasn't sure if she was ready to forgive Ryan fully, she recognized the importance of his journey. His transformation was proof that the work they were doing mattered. The culmination of Serve with Respect's efforts came at a gala held in the grand ballroom of a Manhattan hotel. The event brought together supporters, partners, and beneficiaries to celebrate their progress and recommit to the work ahead. Tasha stood on the stage, looking out at the diverse crowd, her heart swelling with gratitude. This movement isn't about one person or one moment, she said, her voice strong. It's about all of us. It's about recognizing our shared humanity in choosing respect, every single day. Together, we've shown that change is possible. And together, we will continue to build a future where dignity is a given, not a fight. The room erupted in applause, and Tasha felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. As the evening went on, she mingled with attendees, hearing stories of how the initiative had impacted their lives. It was a reminder that the journey was far from over but also that they were on the right path. As Tasha left the gala that night, she looked up at the city skyline, reflecting on how far they had come. What had begun as a single act of courage had grown into a legacy of change. And for Tasha, that was the greatest victory of all.